Okay, so to review one of the rewind problems, let's take a look at number 22. Number 22 says r divided by 3 is greater than 6. So I'm going to write that just over here. R divided by 3 is greater than 6. How would I isolate the r? To isolate the r, because it's got a division sign, that fraction bar is a division sign as well, I'm going to multiply by 3 on both sides, 3 over 1, 3 over 1. Remember, I multiply by 3 over 1 because it's technically the reciprocal of 1 over 3, and I want to cancel out that 3. So if I cancel out that 3, I'm left with r over 1, or just r, is greater than 18 over 1, or just 18. So when I go to graph that on a number line, I put my open circle at r. It's an open circle because there's no line underneath. It's just a greater than sign. And then since its r is greater than 18, my arrow is going to go to the right. Let's also take a look at number 25. So number 25 is just an equation. What's the difference here between what we've been looking at, inequalities, and then that equation? That equation has an equal sign, which means that it is equal to whatever's on the right side. So in this case, 3x plus 5 is equal to 11. How would we go about solving 3x plus 5 equals 11? So the first thing we would need to do is isolate the x, and to do that we're going to start by getting rid of the 5. We get rid of a positive 5 with a negative 5. Minus 5 on both sides is going to cancel out these 5s and leave me with 3x equals 6. To finish this problem, I'm going to divide by 3, and x is going to be equal to 2. This is a basic two-step algebra problem that we've been looking at for a couple weeks now. So we had 2 steps to it because there were 2 numbers that we needed to get rid of. So we had to get rid of the 3 and the 5. Once those were gone, we got rid of the 5 first because it's farther away from the x. We did backwards order of operations. So we started with getting rid of the addition using subtraction, and then we got rid of the multiplication using division. So we ended up with x equals 2. The reason that that's part of your rewind, even though we haven't really been working on it, is because that's what we're going to add into the inequalities today. So now, when we look at a two-step equation, we isolate that x. In this case, we would isolate it, again, we want to start with backwards order of operations, or like I said before, that like weaker antelope. So the thing that's farther away, you want to get rid of that first. So we get rid of that 12. And we use subtraction because we're adding 12. So to cancel it out or to eliminate it, we use a negative 12. That goes away. And we have 4x equals 20. To finish isolating x, we divide by 4, and x ends up being equal to 5. Nothing changes if you take out the equal sign and put in an inequality. So we would solve this exactly the same way that we solved it when it had an equal sign. So instead of saying x is equal to 5, x is greater than or equal to 5. Now I'm still going to want to graph that because, again, if I don't graph it, I have to make a list of all the stuff that x could be. So x could be 5.1 or 5.2 or 5.3 or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I don't want to make a list of all that. So instead, I'm just going to graph the inequality. So at 5, I'm going to put a circle, and I'm going to fill it in because it's greater than or equal to. And since it's greater than, I'm going to say my arrow goes to the right. So to back up, in a two-step inequality, we solve it just like we would a two-step equation. The only difference is that we don't get an equal sign at the end. We keep our inequality sign. The only time that inequality sign changes is if you divide or multiply by a negative. And remember, when you divide or multiply by a negative, your inequality symbol will flip. But that's not happening here because we divided by a positive number. So everything stayed the same. All right, what would I get rid of first here? I want to get rid of what's farther away. So even though the 3x is like on the right side, I still want to get rid of what's farther away from the x first. So I'm going to get rid of this 4. Since this 4 is a positive 4, we don't have a symbol there, so we assume it's a positive. I get rid of it using a negative. I do that on the other side, and I end up with 3x less than 18. To finish that off, I'm going to divide by 3 on both sides, and I end up with x is less than 6. So x is less than 6. To graph this, I put an open circle at 6, and then my arrow is going to go this way because x is less than 6. All right, so go ahead up to your boards and try these practice problems. So you have to graph all of them, even though 6, 7, 8, or 5, 6, 7, 8 don't have number lines, I still want you to graph those. So graph all 8 of these. All right, what's different in this inequality? What is different in this inequality? So in this inequality, we have a little bit more complicated things going on both sides. That doesn't mean we can't do it. We just have to simplify before we can solve it. So what am I going to do to simplify on the left side? On the left side, I've got to distribute this -3. Remember, distribute means multiply by everything inside the parentheses. So that's going to end up giving me -9 plus 3x, and it's a plus 3x because we have a -3 here and a -x here, and those we're going to cancel out into a positive. Less than, what can I simplify on the right side? On the right side we have 4 squared, so that's going to give us 16. Now the first thing I want to get rid of is the -9, and I'm going to get rid of that by adding 9 to both sides, which ends up giving me 3x is less than 25. To finish this off, I'm going to divide by 3, and I end up with x is less than 25 over 3. If I want to simplify that, I can simplify it to 8 1/3 or 8.3 repeating. That's what your calculator would give you. All right, now to graph that on a number line, I'm going to draw a number line. I don't need to put anything on it except that number I care about. So except that 25 over 3. So I'm going to put 25 over 3 right here. And I know that x is less than that, so I put an open circle and I graph it going this way. Okay, so for this problem, we also have a little bit of simplifying to do. We've got to combine like terms on my left side. And on my left side, I have a -4 plus -8. So if I add together -4 and -8, I'm going to end up with -12. There's nothing to simplify on the left side, so I'm going to leave it as 5c minus 2, -5c minus 2. Now, I need to isolate the c. So what do I have to get rid of first? I want to get rid of this -2, so I'm going to add 2 to both sides. Remember, even if the variable's on the right side, that's not what we normally see, but that doesn't change the process. So we're still going to add 2 to both sides. We're still trying to isolate that c, so I want to get rid of the 2 and the 5. So I add that, this is going to cancel out, and I'm going to be left with -5c. And then on this side, I've got -12 plus 2, which is going to give me -10. So to finish this problem, I need to divide by -5. Remember, when I divide by a negative, I have to flip your inequality. So I've got to flip that inequality symbol. So this, which was a less than sign, is now going to become a greater than sign. So that becomes a greater than sign. Whenever I write divided by a negative, the first thing I do is bring my sign down and flip it, because otherwise I'm going to forget. All right, over here, that cancels out, and I'm left with c. And on the left side, I have a +2, because 10 divided by 5 is 2, and a negative divided by a negative gives me a positive. So now when I go to graph that, I want you to be really careful, because I want you to make sure that you remember that my variable's on the right side. So what this is saying is 2 is greater than c, or in other words, c is actually less than 2. C is smaller, so the smaller side of the inequality sign is facing the c. So when you put your open circle at c, your arrow is actually going to go which way? 2 is greater than c, or c is less than 2 means my arrow is going to go this way. So remember, when your variable's on the right side, you can't use this to tell you which direction to go. quite the same way. So it's not just going to point in the right direction. You've got to kind of turn it around. All right, go ahead and try these 4 at your boards.